Und jetzt nimmst du es über die Software auf oder was machst du?
Jetzt machen wir das über die Software, machen noch die Leseansicht.
Und was nimmt er jetzt genau? Nimmt er das jetzt auch auf
Genau,
oder?
also beides.
Okay. Und ich lege jetzt einfach los, ja?
Genau.
Alright, everybody, welcome to this little online lecture by me. How can companies innovate their business model? We're here in Berlin, the capital of Germany. It's 35 degrees outside, so I'm really having on a relaxed outfit because it's really, really hot outside. And the next 60 minutes we will try to answer, we will try to find some answers to this question: how can companies innovate their business model? First, little introduction about me. I'm Christian. I'm a full professor for management at HWTK here in the heart of Berlin. You're right here at Potsdamer Platz, which is kind of the city center of the western part of the town. I'm here the director of the distance learning program. In 2012, I was awarded the Wolfgang Ritter Prize, which is kind of a nice prize in economics to have. I hold a PhD in entrepreneurship and finance by the University of Potsdam. I'm kind of an expert in business modeling, business planning, and technology-based startups. Used to be a consultant with a lot of IT startups, also with biotechnology companies. I've authored about 100 publications in the fields of entrepreneurship, business modeling, business planning, and technology-based startups. And you can follow my work, all the things I did good, all the things I just didn't do that well, if you're more interested in that, via my Google Scholar, my ResearchGate account, or SlideShare. Alright, so very basic things about me. What is the overall question of this little lecture? It's, of course, how can companies innovate their business model? And just to give you more rope to follow me through, I have defined 3 sub-questions to answer the overall question: how can companies innovate their business model? So I divided this overall question in 3 sub-questions. And when I've kind of answered those 3 sub-questions, I will show you some company examples from the technology sphere. Okay, first of all, the question I want to ask is, why do companies need to innovate their business model? Very basic question, and of course this is something we should ask first. The why question, or the why is that even important? Then what is a business model? If you want to talk about something, you need to have a common language and a common understanding of the thing you want to talk about, of the phenomenon you want to talk about. So I want to establish kind of a common language of what is a business model, okay? And then I will go into what instruments exist to innovate the business model. And I've shown you 3 distinct instruments. And those instruments are mainly communication devices. This is the way I see it. They are instruments to communicate inside the company in an efficient and proper way. And there are different ways to do that. There are different ways to communicate, and there's the instrument and there's the practice you have to do with those instruments just to communicate efficiently. Okay? And after that, I will show you some company examples. So, just start. Why is this even important that we talk about business models, and why do companies really need new business models? And the very basic answer is if you don't innovate your business model, innovation, new technologies, and the link between the innovation and the business model will have really, really severe effects if you just lose your your edge as a company and you just lose the market leadership. And there are many company examples, 4 are shown here, that have lost their leadership in a certain market. The one example everybody understands right away is this one, Nokia. I will come to that in a minute. But those 4 examples are very classic. They are mentioned also in the work of Clayton Christensen. I will show his theory in a minute. And those companies like Bucyrus Erie, Xerox, different hard disk manufacturers, or Polaroid, they have one thing in common: they missed a very disruptive innovation. A disruptive innovation, to put it in very simple terms, is an innovation that enables totally new products, totally new business models. Okay, this is a very basic definition what a disruptive innovation is. And this shows you that if a company was successful in the past, like Polaroid, which was a really successful company, and I think when I grew up, my parents had a Polaroid and they made picture after picture. This company still exists, but it's just not on the same magnitude than it used to be. Okay, so what did Polaroid miss? They of course missed the transition to digital photography, just like Kodak. Okay, they're still the Kodak company, but this Kodak company is really a shadow of the Kodak company which it used to be when there was no digital photography around. And the problem those companies had is not that they didn't see it coming, but they just couldn't change their business model. They just couldn't. Okay, they didn't understand it, or they just couldn't do it. Okay, and this puts them out of business, more or less. So then is a very basic example everybody understands, I just said it, is of Nokia. And Nokia followed a path of sustaining innovation. They were in the mobile phone business, and in the 80s those phones were really not a lot mobile. They were really hard to carry, and they were not really handy and stuff like that. But over time, till the 2000 years, those phones just got smaller, more convenient. The battery charge got better and better, so you didn't have to charge your battery like for 2 weeks. Okay, they were really small. They just were fitted in your pocket really nicely. And then 2007, something else comes around, and it's the iPhone. Okay, Steve Jobs introduces the iPhone, and 10 years later, we know the iPhone just was the initial explosion for the smartphone niche. Okay, today nearly every phone, every mobile phone that is sold is a smartphone. Okay, and those smartphones also have a characteristic of a phone. You can call somebody, but they are more or less a substitute for a computer. Okay, you use it as a small computer, as a mobile computer. Many people don't use their laptops anymore. They just use their phones or their iPads, their tablets, and you can use it as a computer. You can email with it, you can download apps, and you can write messages. And what we know from different surveys is that people talk less and less on their phones, and they just text each other. Okay, via WhatsApp or via Viber or via those other messengers. And when you look at it from the perspective of Nokia, this change is really fundamental. Okay, and Nokia was like the #1 mobile phone company in the world. The mobile phone producer, the most innovative mobile phone producer in the world. And after the smartphone market got bigger and bigger, they just couldn't cope with that, and they were sold to Microsoft, and Microsoft let them go. And today we have Nokia again, but it's just a very different company from what it used to be. So what is the main point? What is the theory about those practical examples? And somebody at the end of the 90s developed a really great theoretical foundation, in my opinion, and it was Clayton Christensen by Harvard Business School, and he calls it the theory of disruptive innovation. And his basic argument is the following: you have a innovation path, like here in the mobile phone production line, where the mobile phones just get smaller, they fit nicely in your pocket, and the battery charge just goes up the roof. Okay, the product performance gets better and better, but this is a very linear path of sustaining innovations, of just making something better and better in incremental ways. But then there's something he called like disruptive innovation, which enables a complicated product into a more simple product or a different product. Okay, and this is a different technological path, and this disruptive innovation enables a totally new product and a totally new business model. And if you look at it at the iPhone is actually a new market. Okay, it's not a phone anymore. It just doesn't compete with those tiny Nokia mobile phones. It more or less competes with other PC devices, with computer devices. Okay, and because after a time you can download more and more software via the App Store, it gets more attractive to customers. Okay, so we're talking about totally different product performance indicators. You don't measure a smartphone via the battery life or via the smallness. Actually, those smartphones got bigger and bigger, the screens get bigger and bigger. They don't get smaller and smaller like they used to be in the mobile phone market. And the main thing he sees, what Clayton Christensen sees, is not that companies like Nokia were not seeing this innovation because they are not dumb people, but what he says is that those great companies are just not able to cope with that new innovation and to link it with the business model. This is also a very important thing to understand. It's not the technology in itself that destroys other business model, that destroys other companies. It's the link between the technology and the business model. And the new business model with the iPhone or with the smartphone is of course the download of apps via the App Store. Okay, more and more apps, more and more developers make the whole platform, the iPhone, more and more attractive to other customers. And what companies, traditional companies who don't change this business model, suffer from are those three main things. It's over-engineering of the existing product. It's a very big profit focus. Okay, they don't understand that they have to invest in new product segments. Okay, they just stick with their old profitable products, and they don't invest in new products, and they are very risk averse. Okay, they just decide to do the things that used to be a good idea and used to work over and over and over again, and the argument is just, okay, what used to work last year or the year before will also work in the future. And most of the time they're right, but then there comes a time when you have something like a disruptive innovation, and then this whole thing goes down the pipe and just goes out of business eventually. So just to answer this first question, why is it even important to talk about business models and to talk about technology and new business models? It's of course they history of management of companies is full of companies who got bankrupt because they just couldn't cope with change, they couldn't cope with innovation, and first of all, they couldn't change their business model because they got too imprisoned by their past and by their success, okay? And after a time, they just couldn't be agile anymore, and they just couldn't think of something new, and first of all, a new business model, and to link a new technology to a business model. And this is very important to understand. Business models really the key, and the change and the efficiency of the business model is really the key for future survival, in my opinion. So this is the first question: why is it even important to talk about it? And the second question is, what is a business model? What is a common understanding we can establish to think about a business model? And this is a very good figure from Alexander Osterwalder and Pigneur from 2004. And first of all, what he's saying is that when we hear the term business model, everybody thinks of something else. Okay, it's a very classic communication problem that when you talk about something, a complex term, your counterpart doesn't necessarily have the same in mind. Okay, and when you look at that picture, you see different groups like an investor, a designer, a senior executive, or an entrepreneur, and they just have different things in mind. They have different things they focus on. Okay, the investor just focuses on companies with the most competitive business model. Okay, with the best edge, with the best way of investing capital efficiently. Why on the other side there might be the entrepreneur who just focuses on doing a business model, developing a business model which is fun, okay, which is fun to him, to her, which satisfies his needs, which is a good way of expressing himself through the management. Okay, so what is the idea? The idea is, okay, we have different perspectives on the business model, so we need a common understanding of the business model. And it's really not easy to define the business model, and I've just brought with me some definitions of the business model. They are some of really are complicated, but I like the most easy definition, the shortest definition, which is the business model is a heuristic model that connects technical potential with the realization of economic value. And I think this is really important to understand, that technical potential is just nothing without economic value in the business world. Okay, and the idea that technology in itself is enough is just crazy, it's not right. Okay, it's the right way to think about technology is to think about a business model to link the technology to the right business model and to profit from the economic value. And just because you have a great technology doesn't mean a lot, okay, if you don't develop a business model that can really aim and can really realize the economic value of the technology. What is the relevance? Once again, of course, having a well thought out business model is important for several reasons. While some models are better than others, it is dangerous to link the performance of a firm solely to the configuration of its business model. In most cases, performance is a choice of a business model and how effectively a firm uses its chosen model. And this is, of course, true for all things in management. Everybody uses great theories and great practical examples, but it's execution power. Okay, management has a lot to do, or success in management has a lot to do in the ability to really execute decisions, execute plans, and execute them efficiently and execute them effectively. Okay, so you have to link technology and the business model, and if you have a plan for the business model, you really have to execute it efficiently and effectively. And once again, technology by itself has no single objective value. The economic value of a technology remains latent until it is commercialized in some way via a business model. And this is something I hear a lot from entrepreneurs and managers. They have great ideas, they have great technologies up the shelf, but they tell me one important sentence: I just have to sell it. Okay, I just have to sell it. And this always rings my alarm bells, because when somebody tells me, okay, it's very easy, the idea is great, the technology is great, I just have to sell it, they just don't realize this is the most important part, to sell it and to really realize the economic value, to commercialize it. But it's also most of the time the most demanding and the hardest thing to do, to really sell it and to really let somebody pay for your business model. Okay, so what is a business model? I've shown you a very basic definition, but I will show you a more sophisticated definition of the business model with the business model canvas in a minute. But the business model canvas is a definition of the business model in itself, but it's also a tool to work with a business model. Okay, so I just didn't bring with me only the business model canvas, but two other instruments, and I will show you that in a minute, and those will answer the third question: what are instruments for the effective innovation of the business model? So those are the three basic tools I want to show you. Okay, I want to show you very briefly, and I start with the business model canvas, which is kind of like the state-of-the-art definition of the business model. Then I will show you an approach in itself, which is a business model navigator by Oliver Gassmann from St. Gallen University. And then I will show you the St. Gallen Startup Navigator by Dietmar Grichnik, which is very recent. He just published a book which this main figure in it, and it's new, it's a little bit different, and you just can't say right now if it's like a fundamental new disruptive innovation, but it really looks really good, it's really sophisticated, and I think it has certain advantages over the other two instruments. But we come to that in a minute. What is a business model canvas? A business model canvas is a structure of 9 elements, which was invented by Alexander Osterwalder, who's from Switzerland, from the German-speaking part of Switzerland, I think. And what he says is, well, we can have a language, we can have a basic understanding of the business model through those 9 elements, okay? And we can describe every business model there is through those 9 elements, okay? In the center there's the offering, what is really the value I'm delivering. On the right there's the value creation, what are the key activities, what are my key partners, and what are the key resources. On the right hand you have the customer interface, especially the customer relationship, those segments of the customers, and the channels you can reach the customer. And on the bottom you have the cost structure and the revenue streams. And those 9 elements are the elements you can structure every business model with. And what he's suggesting is once you establish this common communication device of the business model canvas, you can work on it together in a group, and you can not only invent one business model, you can invent numerous new business models via changing one element or a couple elements, okay? And after you developed 10, 20, 30, 100 business models which might be suitable for your technology, you can choose that one which is the best. Okay, and this is the way we should think about business model. And I think he's very right to stress that this is the main idea of business modeling, that we don't aim for the one optimal greatest business model, and we are very past dependent, and this one really has to go right, but we have to have alternatives. We have to talk about alternatives. We have to talk about variations. We have to talk about changing things. Two things which are most of the time in all those 9 elements, which are kind of the problems most of the time, or the harder thing to get, are the things in the center, the offering and the revenue streams, okay? And also it sounds really, really simple. Most of the time it isn't. You really have to talk about what are you really offering the customer. What is your value you're delivering? And only, it's a very easy truth, only if your value is okay or even great, then people will start paying for it. Okay, then people will start paying for it. Yeah, exactly. So, first of all, I showed you the business model canvas, and Osterwalder, this is his really remarkable achievement, really put it on the agenda that we talk about business models, and he provides the business model canvas and different tools via his internet homepage, strategizer.com, and he's really like the godfather of business modeling. He's doing great seminars, putting out great content on business models. Just to look at it, what we have to understand again when we establish this business model canvas is that also when we have a business model, there's no guarantee that this business model will be successful for the rest of the company life. Most of the time, after a couple years, even if you are so lucky to establish the business model, you need to have a new business model. You need to innovate your business model. And this is something which was really put out by Schultz through this business model life cycle. So business models and business model innovation is really important for every business, okay? Not only in the technology sphere, but for every other business as well. And then I will show you like the cornerstones of a different approach. First of all, we had the business model canvas with its 9 elements and this way of talking about the business models. And then we have the St. Gallen Business Model Navigator by Oliver Gassmann. And his approach is a little bit different. His approach is, first of all, we have this little triangle with 4 questions. What is offered to the customer? How is the value proposition created and delivered to the customer? Who is the target customer segment? And why is this business profitable? Okay, and you can have products which would really have an interesting customer segment, but if you can't deliver it profitably, it just doesn't make no economic sense to have that business. And what he's saying is we have a certain way of developing a business model, of innovating a business model. And the first step is that we answer those 4 questions. Those 4 questions, and we have to be really clear about those 4 questions. We have to have really, really good answers for those 4 questions. And then when we have those 4 answers, we go into the ideation phase. Okay, from the top we go down the bottom. And the important things are in this ideation phase where we develop those ideas, what kind of business model innovation we want to have. And I will show you in a minute how this looks like. And his great effort is that he wrote a book which is the result of a large study he did, where he identified 55 business model innovation patterns. Okay, and what he's saying is basically on all his results of his case studies, there are more or less 55 ways of innovating your business model. And those 55 ways, he has printed nice cards, and with those case studies on it, and he named those business model patterns. Here at the deck top, it's razor and blade. You can traditionally think about your razor by Gillette, where you have the razor and the blade, and everybody knows the blades are really not cheap, and Gillette makes a lot of money with selling the blades, not the razor. Or another business model pattern is freemium, where you have different companies like Dropbox, Spotify, Skype. Spotify and Dropbox really well known, and the basic service of those companies is for free, and it really has I think a big value for the customer. Okay, so you can even listen to music all day for free. You just have to cope with advertising. But if you pay a little bit extra, like $5 or $10 or a little bit more, you can have all the music you want for free, all the music you want without ads. Okay, so what those companies do is, or what they made successful is, they have a large user base which uses the free service, and after a time many customers get dissatisfied with the free version and they just pay a little extra to get the premium version of the service. Okay, and what is his idea? His idea is, when we know what are the answers to our 4 questions, is what is the customer, who are we selling to, what is the value proposition we're trying to aim, we just confront it with our 55 business model innovation patterns, and we try to form new business models by incorporating those business model innovation patterns into our business model. And we develop a lot of ideas, and then in the integration part we need to detail the business model, we have to test it for consistency, and then we implement it, and we stay agile, we test it, we adapt. But the basic idea is that when we know where we are going to, what customers, what is the economic value, why should anybody pay for it, and we incorporate certain innovation traits, then we can be successful. And I think it's a very good, a very structured way, a very systematic way to innovate the business model. Okay, of course you need a little bit of practice, and you need to understand the whole way of thinking, and you need to practice the business model idea selection, and you need to practice to incorporate into your business model. But you can have results very quickly. All right. Then the new thing in 2018, Dietmar Grichnik by St. Gallen University just came up with this. This is a startup navigator, and it has a kind of a different approach. It's a way of consulting with companies, and of course you see those 4 stages: profiling, prototyping, sourcing, and scaling. And of course, from the beginning to the end, you can use this startup navigator as a process. It's a structured process, and in every stage you have to aim for certain segments, like what is the job, what are jobs are your customers trying to get done. Yeah, you have to answer that questions very thoroughly. What are the solutions? What are the problems? Okay. Then you go over to the prototyping. You have to think about the product. What is the USP? What is the unfair advantage? What is the thing that makes it special? What is the thing that makes customers want to buy your product instead of any other product of your competition? And then when you follow through this process, in the end, you have a ready business model and a ready company to go out and be successful, okay? Because you've thought of every important aspect of your company, yeah? And of course, it's a process you need to follow, I think, with a consultant, with somebody to help you through, with an external guide. But of course, it's a very structured, systematic way which helps to control the whole process of business model innovation. And there's a book you can buy via Amazon, and I really think it's worth the read if you're into business modeling. So I've answered those 3 very basic sub questions. Yeah. Why is it important to think about innovation of your business model? What is a business model, and what are instruments to innovate the business model in about a half an hour? Of course, there's more to it. There are whole shelves of books on every aspect I just mentioned, but I think for a short introduction, it's okay to do it in like 30 minutes. In the end, what I have brought with me is some business cases I kind of know also from my personal experience, and I just show you and try to exemplify some things I just said with a practical example, okay? And maybe it's kind of nice for you to embed the theoretical knowledge into a practical context. So very, very basic, meet Maurice Stanzus. Used to be a student at HTW Berlin and University of Potsdam. He's there in the middle, working on a idea task, and what he did is in his master's degree he had to write a large thesis, and he wrote that thesis on the Nachhaltigkeitsampel, which is a sustainability measure, okay, or a way of measuring sustainability of companies, of products, if you want to know if the iPhone is really a sustainable product, okay, if you're really buying sustainable, yeah, because many people nowadays just don't want to buy things that harm the environment, which are just not socially sustainable, which are like made in very bad conditions. So people are getting more and more sustainability conscious. And what is Maurice doing? He's developing a metric, a meter ranking for sustainability measurement, because a problem he identifies is that everybody wants to act sustainable, but you just can't really do it because there are so many measurements and you don't know really what measurement is right because there are 400 of them, okay? And what is his idea? His idea is to go down to one measurement. Okay, there are 400 measurements by different institutions like Greenpeace or other institutions, but he combines a lot of those metrics into one easy to understand metric, which is just like a traffic light. You have red, yellow, and green. Green is totally okay, totally sustainable. Red is really not, and like yellow is in the middle. Okay, so he has this idea 2009 2010 in his master's thesis, and then he knows somebody who's really good in internet and programming, and he has a name for it. He calls it WeGreen. And this is WeGreen in 2011. And of course, you see how it looks like. It looks like just like Google. Okay, it's just very, very simple, and it just looks like Google, like it's a search engine. And the search engine wants to classify ventures in regard to the social responsibility. Okay, so in 2011, there's this business model. It's more or less you're online, you could make some money with adding with those Google ads, but they decide not to make any money through ads. So you kind of have a business model, but it's just not having any economic value because nobody's paying for it. Okay, and it's a real big problem to think about ways of making people pay for your service. And then in 2012, he starts to change the business model. Okay, he adds new functionalities, he adds branding, and he wants to become the opinion leader in this sustainability niche. Okay, and in the end, in some way, to profit from this opinion leadership. Okay, and to become the opinion leader, you kind of have to be more transparent about your sustainability ranking and so on. And it now becomes a real company, and what potential investors ask all the time is, okay, it's really nice and sustainability is really nice and it's a big problem in the world, but how do we earn any money with it? How can we earn any money with it to enable your service to make it bigger? And this is since 2013, the site is still online. And what WeGreen is doing is they link their sustainability measurement of the Nachhaltigkeitsampel to products. It becomes kind of like an Amazon for sustainable products. Not quite, but the idea is there. So that you enable consumers to search for sustainable product on your website on wegreen.de. Like you can search for the iPhone, and then if the iPhone is sustainable, if it has a good ranking, or if it's even not, because the site doesn't say, well, if it has a red sustainability ranking, you just shouldn't do it. You can click on the offering, and then you can just purchase it at a partner store. So not WeGreen is selling the iPhone or the product, but the store which is linked to your WeGreen page, and WeGreen just gets a certain amount of money for linking your product in your shop to the sustainability ranking. Okay. In the end, it's a real business model, and you can earn some money with it. And what you can see with WeGreen is that the business model really changed over time. Yeah, from a really hobby to like a NGO non-profit business model to a for-profit business model. but in the end, right now, it's just not that profitable. It just doesn't earn that much money, but this can change, of course. Another way or another area is, of course, education. Especially in the US, the amount people have to pay for tuition for private colleges or for higher education is really, really crazy. Something we really can't think of here in Germany. Um, but what Clayton Christensen says, who wrote a lot about innovative universities and disrupting class, which is a really good book. He says, well, established universities neglect underserved customers. They just become more and more expensive, and they just go just for the premium. They charge more and more tuition. But they can provide, or there are online universities, distance learning focused institutions who can provide on-demand consumption of education in a very cheap way, or in a cheaper way than a traditional university is able to do that. And he is really convinced that this will disrupt the whole education market, which is a really big market, not only in the US, but in the whole Western world. Also in Germany, it's a big market. From 2000 to 2015, in 15 years, those distance learning institutions in Germany just doubled from 217 to 413. Biggest institutions in Germany are like Fernuniversität Hagen, which is a state-owned distance learning university, IUBH or EuroFH, and they have considerably amounts of volume of students. And then, of course, there are those public platforms like edX, Coursera, or Udacity, who really offer a lot of distance learning and distance online education to millions of learners. And it really enables the whole world to earn degrees and to share their knowledge. Okay, and it's a really disruptive innovation for those high paying, high tuition universities in the US, who just offer kind of the same degree, maybe a little more reputation, but in the end the knowledge is just not that much different. Okay, edutech I think is a big area which will grow in the future. Here are some platforms like Coursera, which is very well known, education.com, Udacity, and I can just show you one which is here right around the corner. It's called Quiz Academy, and its idea is to teach via smartphone, and to teach via smartphone through multiple choice quizzes which are accompanying your lectures and which can also accompanying books, and it's more like a game. Okay, you have fun and you learn something while you play those quizzes, and you just get a certain feedback right away, and it really has proven that it really enhances the success of our students. Then the third thing I have brought with me is, of course, robo-advisors in the finance industry. They have big problems to cope with. Regulation is really limiting their new business they can make. When you work in a bank, it's just not a very great time to work in a bank or in a financial institution. And also technology poses a threat to traditional wealth management, to traditional asset allocation, because there's also shelves of papers who show that asset managers are most of the time not worth their money. They can't outperform the market, and it's most of the time better to manage your money via an algorithm, via a computer program. And this is a big area of robo-advisors, robotic advisors, who have no active management in that way that you have a human decide your asset allocation, but you have like an algorithm who decides without emotion where to put your money in. Okay, and this makes it, of course, more efficient, and of course it reduces also the costs. Okay, it reduces the costs for the investor. And there's big institutions like Deutsche Bank in Germany. It's the biggest private bank, who has started with robo-advisors. Their robo-advisor in 2008 is called Robin, and there are also independent robo-advisors which are not linked to a banking institution. In Germany, I think the biggest is Scalable Capital in Munich, and they offer those automatic asset allocation. Right now we just don't know because it's pretty new. We just know what is really the benefit, if it's really more beneficial than a human asset allocation. But in the US you have robo-advisors like Wealthfront, who is really having a great run, having billions of dollars under management, and which proves to be really efficient. Okay, those are three areas: education, robo-advising, and the sustainability sphere, where you really have to link the technology with the business model. All right, any questions? Of course, you can send me questions. I hope you liked it. I would be happy to answer it and to get in touch with you. And this is some literature and further reading I have summed up for you. I hope you liked it. I hope you learned something in the last 50 minutes. If not, you just wasted 50 minutes of your life. Sorry for that. But I hope it was of some kind of value for you. All right. Okay, have a great day. Bye bye.